What's up guys, Lifting here. Path of Exile's 1 month Flashback League is just around the corner, and per tradition I am of course going to present 5 builds for you to get inspired by. There's a link to each guide in the description. Before we begin, a big thanks to you guys over at Patreon. I cannot say this enough, your support means a lot to me. Thank you. Also, if you are new to the game, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more content in the future. Let's get into it. The first build on the list is a Winter Orb Elementalist by Goofy Goober. Winter Orb is the type of skill that works a bit like if you left your car out in the cold winter for a year without using it. When you then eventually try to start it up, then it may feel a bit sluggish and underperforming. But as the engine gets warmed up and the oil starts flowing, that's when you are reminded that you're driving a beast of a car. I hope that metaphor works for you. Winter Orb really is the type of skill that at early levels can feel a bit slow and janky, but as it gains some levels and you get some proper gear, especially with increased duration, then it starts to feel really good. It can work great as a mapper and also boss killer. Goofy Goober's build can be used as a starter build as it doesn't have any specific item requirements to get going, but the guide comes with plenty of powerful endgame suggestions, especially for those who like crafting their own gear. With this setup, Winter Orb will work as your primary damage setup, but when you need that bit of extra single target burst, you pop Vaal Righteous Fire and then Vaal Blade Vortex and shred your enemies to pieces. While Goofy's build is a great league starter, I'd recommend you only considering this build if you at least have a bit of experience with crafting or a decent understanding of item affixes and how they work in general, as this will be necessary to understand the endgame gearing. The second build on the list is an Essence Drain Trickster by Ghazzy. Essence Drain received a crazy buff when 3.6 was released, and it was already pretty damn good even before that. The endgame damage got a significant boost, but especially at early levels the skill now feels significantly stronger and thus also much more enjoyable to level. With Essence Drain, both great clear speed and boss killing potential is possible. When you then pair that with the buffed Trickster from 3.62, you end up with a build that has both solid offensive and defensive capabilities, that is easy to gear and that feels great to progress. Depending on your own personal preference, it's also possible to use Bane instead of Contagion if that skill suits your playstyle better. Overall speaking, Essence Drain builds are in a very solid state these days, and if you haven't already, now would be a good chance to try it out. The third build on the list is my own Caustic arrow, Occultist. Initially my goal with this was simply to prove that Caustic Arrow had the potential for some good single target DPS. Later I realized that it wasn't just good, it was actually pretty damn great, especially when you also factor in the survivability aspect of the build. It is played as the Occultist, and via this plus the Soul Strike Quiver you end up with some crazy fast energy shield recharge mechanics that trivializes many of the late game boss fights. The build also has decent clear potential, but the biggest strength definitely lies in how well it handles bosses. You'll have to be a bit patient as it may feel a bit slow at early levels, however once you start to get some proper AoE and levels on the skill, it really picks up. It is also worth mentioning that a bit of crafting is going to be needed to get your bow for endgame, but how to do so and how to obtain it is all covered in the guide. I've done all content on this build including Uber Elder, and it was even at a rather modest budget, relatively speaking. So if you want something a little off meta, then you might want to consider checking this out. Coming up fourth on the list is an Incinerate cast while channeling Volatile Dead Chieftain, also known as the chunky Chargrel Chieftain. I featured this build back in 3.5, and based on feedback people seem to have really liked the setup. With this you channel Incinerate, which then activates your cast while channeling support that then goes on to cast Volatile Dead. Celltank used this build to win a demigod back in the solo self-found Incursion Flashback race, and it has since then remained a solid build. It is incredibly tanky and handles most bosses with ease, and since it was initially designed around solo self-found, it means that the progression of the build doesn't rely on specific unique items or other stuff you won't have access to early on. Again, this is also the type of build that definitely fits that off-meta category. I've played a variant of this build myself, and it has a very fun playstyle in my opinion once you get it going. The fifth and final build on the list is a Tectonic Slam Juggernaut by Sleevelessless. This is another of those builds I featured in the past, but with Tectonic Slam being one of the absolute best melee skills currently, and this list otherwise not having any other melee builds, I thought it a great fit. With this setup you end up with solid clear speed, great defense and excellent boss killing potential. There's one thing to be aware of though, and that is that the build requires 2 of the Razor of the 7th Sun swords to fully work, and since these only drop from the Phoenix Guardian, they might not be available the first few days of the leak. However, once a few days have passed, PoE trade will be littered with these, and they typically sell for very little and should thus be rather easy to obtain. Market prices can of course change, so until then you can of course just use other weapons, and depending on the content you're facing, you're probably going to be just fine. But as soon as you can, obtaining 1 or preferably 2 of these swords is going to make a big difference. Besides this, the items suggested for the build are all rather budget friendly and should thus not prove to be an issue obtaining. Tectonic Slam is a very fun melee skill and has been amongst the top melee choices for a few leagues now. And that, guys, was not all. I do of course have a bonus build. Actually I have 2, and I have to admit that they're both my own, but they are solid choices and very viable in the current state of the game. The first of these is the Ancestral Warchief champion build, and I've described this setup so many times now that I'm starting to run out of different ways of presenting it. But basically with this you get a build that's very beginner / league starter friendly, that on a relative budget can do any content in the game. It was originally designed as an Uber-left farmer, and it does that exceptionally well, but if you add a bit of extra gear to it, any boss, including Uber Elder, becomes a possibility. The Totem playstyle isn't for everyone, but I personally like it, especially when playing hardcore, as it adds that extra layer of indirect defense by having your totems taunt the enemies and thus leaving you alone. If you don't mind totems, you can't really go wrong with this build, and if you have some friends joining you that you wish get a proper start to the game, then this would be a good build to suggest for them. The second bonus build is my Frostbolt Totem Hierophant. Originally I designed this build with a focus on clear speed and the notion that boss killing just wasn't going to be its thing. However, since 3.6 the Frostbolt skill has received a significant damage boost, and the build, while not exactly a boss killer per se, should still be more than capable of handling bosses now. I haven't tried Uber Elder on this, but anything up to and until that shouldn't be a problem with proper gearing and levels. With this setup you have the possibility of being able to spawn either 3 or 4 totems at a time, and due to the long range of the Frostbolts, this will allow you to cover a huge area in balls. This is great if you want to establish your masculinity, but also provides great clear speed potential, and with the Frostbolt MTX it is just oh so satisfying. And those were the builds I wanted to present to you for this Flashback League event. In the interest of inspiration, let's all share which build we're going to play in the Flashback in the comments below. And feel free to share links to other builds or content creators, I don't mind that. As a matter of fact, I'd appreciate it. The point really is just to provide a place with lots of build choices for you guys to choose from. Again, a big thanks to you guys over at Patreon, I appreciate you. Also please note that I have recently updated the tier rewards for being a patron, including the possibilities of having your name featured as a supporter for future videos. And I'm planning on having this feature live and ready to go in a few weeks time. Also please visit us over at discord.gg/lifting for a place to discuss Path of Exile builds, get help from the community, or for more build suggestions. Thank you for watching, and bros, do you even nerd?